Tonight on Global National, a Sunday morning church service under attack. A gunman sets fire to a Mormon church in Michigan.
The shooter is down. We do have multiple victims.
What we know so far on the victims and possible motive. Ukraine under fire. Russia launches one of its largest aerial assaults of the war. How Europe and Washington are responding. One of the world's most prestigious golf tournaments turns ugly. Why the Ryder Cup's American fans are being accused of abusive behavior. Plus, 80 years of uniting nations. The UN marks a major milestone while facing criticism and calls for renewal.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. A violent attack at a place of worship in the U.S. has left at least 3 people dead and multiple others wounded. Police say a gunman drove his vehicle into a Mormon church in Michigan during Sunday service. He then started shooting and set the building on fire. Candice Cole reports from Washington.
The shooter is down. We do have multiple victims. This is a dynamic scene.
Chaos and horror unfolded here at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan, where a raging fire burned for hours after worshipers' lives were cut down by a lone gunman Sunday morning. Police say the shooter was 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford from the nearby city of Burton.
He drove his vehicle through the front doors of the church. He then exited his vehicle, firing several rounds at individuals within the church.
Police believe the gunman set fire to the church where hundreds of people were gathered after driving through the entrance. The gunman was then killed in a shootout with police. The incident has left those living in this community of just 7,700 people shaken.
This is unbelievable.
Like, my hands are shaking. Like, it's 10 minutes down the road from where I live, my home. That's insane.
Police say at least 10 people were taken to the hospital. They expect to find more victims once debris from the fire is cleared. In a statement, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer said her heart is breaking for the Grand Blanc community while thanking first responders. And a statement from the Church of Latter-day Saints says, quote, places of worship are meant to be sanctuaries of peacemaking, prayer, and connection. We pray for peace and healing for all involved. This marks the second church shooting in a month's time in the U.S. where the issue over gun rights continues to spark heated debate. In response to Sunday's mass shooting, President Trump said on Truth Social this appears to be a targeted attack on Christians in the U.S., saying the epidemic of violence must end immediately. Police are now investigating to learn more about the gunman and a possible motive. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
It's been a particularly dangerous and deadly day in Ukraine. Russia unleashing one of its largest ever aerial attacks. Hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles, killing at least 4 people and injuring 40 others. It comes just days after the U.S. president suggested Ukraine could take back all of its conquered territory. As Touria Izri reports, Ukraine's European allies are also on high alert.
Explosions rocked Kyiv as Russia launched a large-scale attack. Ukraine says it shot down most, but not all, of the roughly 600 drones and 40 missiles Moscow fired. The deadly bombardment damaged more than 24 buildings in the capital.
It's one more example of genocide of Russian Federation against Ukraine, against capital of Ukraine.
Bombs rained down on other cities, hitting residential apartments. I was close to suffocating, says this 80-year-old woman. I don't know how I managed to escape. The assault has put Europe on even higher alert. Neighboring Poland deployed fighter jets as a precaution after an incursion into Polish airspace earlier this month that NATO blames on Russia. And Denmark banned civilian drones after several were spotted at some of its military facilities. The country has not explicitly said who it believes is responsible. On Saturday, Russia's foreign minister told the United Nations his country does not intend to attack Europe, but that any aggression will be met with, in his words, decisive action.
And only Russia deserves to be blamed for this.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called Sunday's drone barrage a vile attack and exactly how Russia declares its true position. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance also took aim at Moscow in an interview with Fox News Sunday.
The Russians have got to wake up and accept reality here. A lot of people are dying. They don't have a lot to show for it.
He echoed Donald Trump, who did a 180 on the war last week, saying he believes Ukraine can win back all of its territory. But the U.S. president stopped short of slapping new sanctions on Russia. Touria Izri, Global News, Montreal.
Ukraine's neighbor, Moldova, is holding a high-stakes parliamentary election today. The vote in the former Soviet republic is widely seen as a choice between deeper integration with the European Union or a drift back to Russia's sphere of influence. The race pits the governing pro-Western party against several Moscow-friendly opponents. Moldova is applying to join the EU and was granted candidate status in 2022, shortly after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The country's president had warned of Russian interference in this election. Early results show her pro-European party in the lead. U.S. President Trump is expressing optimism about reaching a deal to end the war in Gaza. Today, he posted, "We have a real chance for greatness in the Middle East. We will get it done." Trump is expected to share a new proposal with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when the two men meet tomorrow in Washington. Meanwhile, Israeli tanks are moving deeper into Gaza City's residential districts. Gaza's health ministry estimates 66,000 Palestinians have been killed in almost 2 years of war. Canada's Prime Minister is returning home following trips to New York and London. Over the past week, Mark Carney met with many world leaders for conversations he's touted as crucial to Canada's economy and security. But it's unclear just how much of that talk has resulted in action. Mackenzie Gray is traveling with the Prime Minister. So, Mackenzie, what did Carney accomplish during his travels?
Mark Carney has been busy, there's no doubt about it, Jeff. He's met with over a dozen world leaders this week, including in Ottawa, where he signed a trade deal with Indonesia, probably the most significant, tangible thing to happen this week. And while cutting a deal with the fourth largest country by population in the world is no joke, Mark Carney has set a lot higher bar for himself than that. So there is political risk for him if he continues to travel as much as he has, but doesn't get the results of building and doing things faster than we've seen before in Canada, which has been one of his key campaign lines.
And Mackenzie, the Prime Minister has also been talking up his meetings with a number of business leaders this past week. What can you tell us about who he's been meeting with?
Well, that's a great question, Jeff. The Prime Minister's office has been tight-lipped all week about which CEOs and other top business folks the Prime Minister has been meeting with, so I asked Mr. Carney about it directly on Saturday.
We share broad. It's a good question. Actually, don't know what we share, to be honest. I mean, how's that for an honest answer?
Can you tell us a few of the people you've met?
We met today with a number of infrastructure, basically infrastructure type investors. So people who have global capital invest around the world, largely in infrastructure projects.
The PMO did release names from one of the meetings that happened on Saturday. Carney was with executives from BlackRock, the Qatari Investment Fund, and Mark Wiseman, one of the co-chairs of the Century Initiative. All the kinds of names Carney's trying to attract to invest in Canada. But the issue for Carney going forward could politically be his own ethics issues. He has over 100 companies that he can't be involved in discussion with because of his own personal investment and past ties. So if Carney does break that screen, expect the Conservatives will try and make major hay out of that, trying to paint the Prime Minister as just like Justin Trudeau, who had 2 high-profile ethics violations.
Mackenzie Gray in London. Thanks, Mac. First Nations leaders in Manitoba are sounding the alarm after a Winnipeg couple was charged with abusing 2 foster children in their care, one of whom remains in critical condition with what police describe as life-altering injuries. As Melissa Ridgent reports, those inside the system say the case highlights a number of issues around child safety.
Jamie Pfau has spent 14 years working with children in care.
We have helped to raise 8 children in the province. Many have aged out, of course, who we still have a relationship with, and I feel like we're their safety net and will be forever.
Manitoba's Foster Parents Association is one of many voices to raise concerns about safety gaps, lobbying the Manitoba government to make fixes long before first responders were called to a Winnipeg home on September 19th. 4 children were removed, and a 25-year-old foster mom is charged with assaulting 2 of them and failing to provide the necessities of life. The 26-year-old foster father faces the latter charge. 1 child remains in hospital in critical condition with life-altering injuries.
we have a legal responsibility to these children when they come into care. Like, not the foster parent, but the system, the agency that's taking these kids. They're responsible for their well-being while they're in care. They should be doing the checks. They should be doing home visits more often if they're not. Like, I know that legally these workers are supposed to see these kids once a month. That is not happening. That doesn't happen. It's not, the system is so overworked.
Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kira Wilson said in a statement, when a child is critically injured in a foster home, the public asks how this could happen. But First Nations leadership has been raising the alarm for years. More than $500 million a year flows into Manitoba's child welfare system, yet she says it's somehow not enough to keep kids safe. The First Nations Child Welfare Agency involved wouldn't comment, but Winnipeg police say they are cooperating with the investigation. Foster parents, meanwhile, hope the government will finally make a foster parent training program mandatory.
Manitoba is one of the only jurisdictions in the world that doesn't have a pre-service training program.
We'll definitely have to do a lot differently in the future. I mean, you don't beat up kids. Everyone knows this. How is it that this even happened in the first place?
Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
Remembering Joyce Echaquan coming up. The Indigenous woman's death shocked the country. 5 years later, have the calls for change been answered? It's been 5 years since the death of Joyce Echaquan, an Indigenous mother who recorded her final moments from a Quebec hospital bed. Her story sparked national outrage and calls for change, but advocates say more still needs to be done. Felicia Perillo reports, and a warning, some of the details are disturbing.
5 years ago, Joyce Echaquan live streamed from her hospital bed in Joliette. The 37-year-old mother of 7 cried out in pain as staff hurled racist insults. Hours later, she was gone. Her death shocked the country. It sparked outrage, protests, and then came the coroner's inquest. It was revealed that Echaquan's death was an accident, a result of a buildup of fluid in her lungs. But when the coroner was asked if she would have been treated differently and survived if she was a white woman, she said yes.
They sort of look at it as just like one bad apple, but I believe we have been, having issues throughout the years all across Canada in different provinces about these types of abuses that happen in hospitals.
In response to her death, Echaquan's community created Joyce's Principle, a 16-page document that calls for Indigenous people to have equal, discrimination-free access to health and social services. But the province has yet to adopt it. Instead, last year, it passed Bill 32, which aims to institute a cultural safety approach towards Indigenous patients. But advocates say it's not enough.
To us, Bill 32 was more of a public relations exercise than a systemic answer to a systemic issue.
For many, official recognition of systemic racism remains a key demand and an integral step toward change.
For Indigenous people in Quebec, that would make a big difference, that we will feel respected and feel understand if we go in that direction.
Others say September 28 should be a national day of remembrance, a day when people would learn about Echaquan so that history never repeats itself.
Day of awareness. That's what the government can do. Day of awareness. Everyone wear purple.
A way to carry Echaquan's memory forward and a reminder that more change is still needed. Felicia Perillo, Global News, Montreal.
Is artificial intelligence coming for your job? Coming up, expert advice on how to AI-proof your skill set. Team Europe and Rory McIlroy were looking for payback at the Ryder Cup in New York today, not only against their American opponents, but also the rowdy American fans. Team Europe captured the Ryder Cup over Team USA by a slim margin. On Saturday, the American crowd taunted McIlroy mercilessly, chanting and yelling various vulgarities. At one point, McIlroy lost his cool, swearing at the fans after they interrupted several of his shots and even threw a drink at McIlroy and his wife. The event's MC even stepped down today for taking part in that heckling. And the Blue Jays also have reason to celebrate. Toronto defeated Tampa Bay today, and with that, the Jays captured the AL East Division for the first time in a decade and also earn a bye to the divisional round. The Jays now have a few days off before they begin the playoffs against either the New York Yankees or Boston Red Sox. Well, artificial intelligence is already ushering in changes to the way we look for work and perform our tasks. But analysts say the biggest changes are still to come. And Gaviola reports on the AI risks to your job security.
First, they started stealing human jobs in the service industry. Next, the quiet infiltration of AI, taking on entry-level office jobs.
There's a legitimate worry there. We are really changing the technology in a way that we haven't before.
The AI disruption of the labor market will not follow in the footsteps of the Industrial Revolution, where humans learn to work with machines on the assembly line, according to futurist and economist Linda Nazareth.
This is somewhat different. This actually can replace job functions.
This disruption will usher in a new way to think of survival of the fittest.
Jobs, as we traditionally knew them, are rapidly morphing and changing.
People's mindset around jobs is in need of an update, according to analysts. In the future, positions will center around a skill set and outcomes. That's a shift from today's focus on degrees and job descriptions.
My advice would be to focus on the amount of value that we can generate if we adopt and embrace AI rather than being afraid of it. As a new grad, I would focus more on those skills that I can augment my day-to-day job to make me a superpower.
There are opportunities for those who can best harness emerging technology and upskill as required. But the most AI-proof skills may be so-called soft skills, the things no machine can duplicate.
Resilience, creativity, empathy, motivation and self-awareness, curiosity, service orientation, and teaching and mentoring. Now, organizations and for individuals, developing these skills gives you a little bit of armor against all the changes ahead.
Chances are the AI era means fewer positions available for humans to fill. Some estimates suggest a reduction of 20 to 30% of roles, which will bring about thorny questions for society and for policymakers to manage.
The question here, though, is not will there be fewer jobs? It'll be if there's an increase in productivity and profits, who will own that? Will it flow to workers at all? Will there be some benefits there? Will it be a small number of people? Will it show up in tax revenues?
Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Still ahead, the United Nations turns 80, but the global institution is facing tough criticism and questions about its future. Welcome back. The United Nations is marking its 80th anniversary. The global body has a remarkable history, but it's now facing questions about its future. Eric Sorensen looks at whether the UN can still deliver on its mission and the role Canada could play.
The United Nations, imperfect but still essential, says the Secretary General.
80 years on, we confront again the question our founders faced. What kind of world do we choose to build together?
It's a more complex world now. The UN comprises 193 states, compared with 51 when it was founded.
The nations were united as they launched a rule of international law.
After two devastating world wars, there was real hope that a global body could bring lasting peace.
You members of this conference are to be architects of a better world.
I think there was a great mood of optimism, also a sense that the United Nations would actually be able to reach into states and aid individuals and bring justice, equality.
The UN brought world leaders to this place, from Khrushchev and Castro to Reagan and Thatcher, from Arafat to Netanyahu. Often stymied by lack of consensus and the vetoes of superpowers, countries under the UN still have eradicated smallpox, reduced hunger and poverty, limited nuclear weapons, and sometimes kept the peace. International peacekeeping is where Canada distinguished itself. One Canadian was instrumental in creating the first United Nations emergency force. In 1956, the Suez Canal crisis threatened to become a global conflict. Canada's Lester Pearson proposed the first UN peacekeeping force to supervise a ceasefire.
That was a flashpoint that could have led to potentially World War III. And because of the quick thinking of Pearson and many Canadian peacekeepers, we were able to prevent that from happening.
The future Prime Minister received the Nobel Prize for Peace, and Canada would go on to take part in more than 50 peacekeeping missions. But peacekeeping and other programs like foreign aid are foundering. A lack of funding and now Washington's disdain cloud the UN's future.
The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots.
This is sort of a perfect storm of financial pressure, great power, fractured politics, and real strain on the sort of systems that people depend on for humanitarian relief and food.
More than ever, Canada's voice may be important on issues like climate and women and children's health.
Finding where are those niche areas that they can be most effective. Where does it have expertise and capabilities? And those are the issues to lean into.
In spite of its shortcomings, says Andrea Sharon, if the United Nations did not exist, it would probably have to be created. The world needs it. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Jeff Semple. On Tuesday, the country will mark National Truth and Reconciliation Day, and some communities took time today to honor victims and survivors of residential schools. In Winnipeg, a nonprofit advocacy group held their first annual Reconciliation Walk, while people in Edmonton took part in an Orange Shirt Day run, the first of many more events to come this week. Thanks for watching. Nuthu Garcha will be at the anchor desk with you tomorrow. Have a great night.